You're listening to Chibi No Podcast.
Welcome everyone to another Chibi No Podcast review. This is me, David the Smash Fan, always giving you the best anime reviews on the web. Today we are going to review a little anime called Erased, or in Japanese is called Boku Dake ga Inai Machi. Now, this anime started back in January of 2016, and it is the anime adaptation of the manga of the same name, written and illustrated by Kei Sanbe. And the wonderful A1 Pictures did the adaptation. And if you know anything about me, I love A1 Pictures. Their style and just I've loved almost everything that's come out of their company. And this one, it's one of the better ones. So kind of to go over this anime, it deals with this main guy, and his name is Satoru. What's his last name? Fujinuma. That's what it is. And he's a 29-year-old guy, and this takes place in 2006. And basically, he has this ability called revival, and he uses this to prevent life-threatening incidents. And he doesn't really get to choose when it happens. Like it always happens randomly whenever he's around something that could basically kill someone or put someone's life in danger. And like it doesn't really explain too much why he has this power, how he got it. That's not really explained too much in the show, neither in the manga. But that's just, at this point, like I really could care less of how he got it, because sometimes when they do explain it, it's something stupid. Like in animes, they touched a stone, or they looked at the moon and the light hit them at the right time, or whatever it is, and they have powers. So for them not telling how he has it is okay. At least in my eyes, like I wasn't too worried about how he got the powers. But anyway, it follows him, and I'll kind of spoil the first episode. I'll try and keep this as spoiler free as I can, because this is it's a drama. It's a psychological mystery. And so basically, but in the first episode, what happens is, there's a few main characters that in this show that are very key. So there's Satoru Fujinuma. There's Airi Katagiri. She's a co-worker of his. She helps him a lot throughout this show. And then there's Kayo Hinasuki, who we'll talk about a little bit later, who is someone that he knew back in elementary school. And then there's the mom, Sachiko Fujinuma. Now, in the first episode, basically what happens is it kind of explains that his revival power only works or puts him back like a minute or two. So he has to figure out what is different in when he went back and then prevent it. And one thing that happened in his childhood is that there was these abductions of these three girls, and one of them was this girl, Kayo Hinasuki. And it was someone that he had always seen. And so when they found out that she was one of the girls who died, who was taken away from this murderer, he'd always regret saying, I could have saved her. And basically at this time, like, he kind of forgot a lot of what happened in his elementary days. But he gets a revival at one point, and he doesn't know what the heck's going on. He's like, what's different about this time? And the mom has this premonition that, the one that they allegedly caught, that they said was the killer of those three girls. She says, I don't think it was actually that person. It has to be this other one that I'm thinking. And it looks like she cracked the case, and before she can report to anyone, she gets killed. And Satoru gets there like moments later after she's killed and sees her mom laying in her own blood, and then a neighbor comes by and sees that Satoru's there, and so automatically thinks, oh, he's the guy, he's the one that killed her. And so in the first episode, he's running away, not wanting to get caught by the police, and as he's running, he has a revival, and he doesn't go back a few minutes, he goes back all the way to his elementary school days. And like we said, the whole point of the revival power is to stop a life-threatening incident. And so this one, he's like, okay, well, obviously the killer of my mom is the one that killed these girls all those years ago. I think it was 18 years ago that he goes back. And so he has to try and find the killer and try to rewrite it so that it doesn't happen to his mom. And so that's where the story takes place. Most of it takes place when he's back in elementary school, and some of it takes place in the present. And it was really well written. Like, I was very amazed at how they had this, like I said, this mystery psychological thriller, and it was all taking place with these kids, and I was like, wow. Like, I didn't think they would do it very well. I thought it'd be a good attempt, but not as good as it was when I started seeing it. Especially like the characters, like some of his friends that he has is like Kenya Kobayashi. This guy, he's very smart and he's very intuitive and notices a lot of little small changes. So he plays a big part in the show. Then he has like another friend, Hiromi Sugita, doesn't play too big of a part. And then we have like Osamu and other people. But the main one that they focus on in this is the main, I guess, classmate of his is Kayo Hinasuki, because she's the one that he personally knew and wanted to save, all those years ago. So this is his chance to not only save her, but save his mom from their fates that they had in his previous, let's say timeline. And it's really interesting. Like, it's funny to see how, even though he is in his like 10-year-old body or 9-year-old body, his mentality is that of a 29-year-old. And in the anime, when he's speaking, you hear this child's voice, and then when he's talking inside, in his mind, he has his voice of when he's grown up. But it's interesting to see how his mom, like, still, even though she can tell he's changed, that he feels different, but can still read his son like no other. And what's funny is, I don't know if it's a side effect of revival or not, but he's always in the show, he's always sometimes saying his thoughts out loud. And in one of the parts, he's with Hinasuki and his mom, and she's in between them. And in this part, I guess a little, backtrack a little bit, is he starts getting really close to Hinasuki, and like takes her places, and wants to be protective of her. And what's funny is like he starts saying some things that he thinks in his mind. Like at one point, he says like she's very cute and pretty, and he thought he only said that in his mind, but he said it out loud. And he's like, crap, what am I doing? And the other times he's thinking, he's like, why am I getting embarrassed? Why am I getting flustered? Like, she's elementary school. Like, I'm 29 years old. He's telling himself that. And it's funny how he's fighting this, because, yeah, he's body, he's a 9-year-old kid right now, but his mentality right now is of a 29-year-old. But getting sidetracked, but at this one point, how, like I was saying, his thought, he always says his thoughts out loud. His mom was in between him and Hinasuki, and he's like, what? And like, am I in the way? And he's like, yeah, you are. Get out of the way. And so he thought that, but he also said that out loud. And the mom gets like mad, and then Hinasuki gets embarrassed, and she's like, well, you stay on that side anyway. And so like some of those things, it was fun. Like as much as it was a thriller and a mystery, it was still very funny in a lot of points. But overall, the tone was very serious for the most part, and very dramatic. And like I said, she's a key character. Like, she's the one that he focuses on for the most part of the series. Like, there's the other two girls that he needs to save, and he does. And it does happen a lot quicker and a lot easier than Hinasuki. Hinasuki it takes a while. I think it takes like, I want to say like 7-8 episodes for that to be resolved and to have her be, safe. And what's interesting, again, I'm spoiling some of this stuff, but what's interesting, like I say, like there's a reason why he goes back to the present. There's not the reason that you think it is. I'm saying, that he does succeed, but there is a point where he fails. and he goes back to the present, and that's where Airi Katagiri comes in, and why she's a big part of helping him, fix the past. And what they try to do in the anime, and they did this also in the manga, is they have Airi and Hinazuki say some of the same dialogue to him, and so a lot of theories go by, like, well, maybe they're the one and the same. Maybe I think the one theory that made no sense, they're saying maybe this is Hinazuki's daughter or relative or some way, but like when you see this show, you're like, no, there's no way that could have been a relative of hers, just because of the circumstance and the situation that happens in the show. And the one that they say, oh, maybe it's Hinazuki's daughter, you're like, well, there's one small little tiny detail that they forgot to mention: the fact that Hinazuki's dead. She's dead in this time, in the original timeline that the show starts off. So I mean, that one I never understood why people thought that in the forums. I was like, you're dumb. But anyway, so she helps him a lot, and then he goes back to the past by sheer willpower. And why he goes back, or what triggers him to try and go back, I won't spoil. And so, like I said, during the show, he's trying to save these girls, but he's also trying to look for the killer, trying to find out who is the one that murdered these girls. And at one point, he focuses so much on the rescue that doesn't really do the evidence of finding out who the killer is. Although there are signs here and there that he notices, oh, this person is the killer. It doesn't say the name, or doesn't show who it is, but certain things happen and certain things are found, certain items are found. He's like, has to be the killer's stuff. And so from there he starts, focusing, okay, I can't just save the girls, I have to find out who this killer is. And so he focuses on that during the show as well, near the end part. And then and then that's basically the end part, like the last 5 episodes, where he tries to save the girls and find out who the killer is. Now, what's interesting is that the manga and the anime both ended, I would say, roughly within 2 weeks of each other, maybe even 1 week, and both of them had the same ending, but the way that they got to the ending was very different. In the manga, I believe there was like 7 or 8 chapters, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, that the anime had to explain and do in 2 episodes. Because after 2 or 3 episodes, because basically there's a huge thing that happens, a huge event that happens in episode 9, I believe. Nope, sorry. There's a big thing that happens in episode 10. A big thing that happens in episode 10. And so after this, the episode 11 12 is supposed to be the finale of the arc. And like I said, in this event happens like 7 or 8 chapters before the end of the manga. And this happened only 2 episodes before they're supposed to end, because it only has 12 episodes. And so I was thinking, how are they going to do this? Because in the manga, they go into detail of this final arc of these certain events that are happening to reach the conclusion and then finish. And in this one, I felt like there's no way they can do it. But what was interesting is, although it felt a little bit rushed, it came out just as good. Like I said, the ending's the same, but how they get to the ending's very different. One thing I'll spoil again is there is a confrontation between Satoru and the killer in this final episode and in the final arc of the manga, and that confrontation is different in how it's executed, how the location, and how it's resolved. And both of them, one of them in the manga, like I said, is a little bit more descriptive. And in the anime, it was not as descriptive, but they did this thing that a lot of like if you see any crime videos or crime shows, that at the end they'll be like, how they got to the conclusion. They do these little they look in the past for a few minutes, they go back to the future, and the past and the future. So that's what they did here in episode 12, where they go to the past and they go to the future, and then it ends. And so when it finishes in the present, especially in the anime, like, it was really, really dramatic, and it was really cool, like, to see what happens between Satoru and the killer, and you're like, what the heck happened? Because it's so different from the manga of, how Satoru confronts and deals with the killer. Both of them are very risky moves that he does, that Satoru does. But this one, I felt was a little bit more. It was a little bit more risky. Like I said, because location has to do with this as well, and the fact of what discussion is done with the killer. Like, if you're expecting the Satoru and the killer to go all out in a fight or something like that, this is not the ending that you're gonna like. This is more a battle of words and wits, and basically trying to figure each other out, and I really, really liked it. And then the one thing else I want to talk about, like, I'm not gonna spoil the ending. The ending I thought was really good. The last page or two of the manga is the exact same way that the anime ends, and basically, Satoru's whole thing his whole thinking in the anime and the manga is, believing. And one of the things that he says in the anime, I don't think he says in the manga, but I remember in the anime he says, I think believing is a word, or it means that we hope to believe. Something like that. And it was really interesting. And at the very end, very last, like, 2 minutes, something happens, and he's like, I never stopped believing. And that part was like, oh, it was a little touching. It was really, really cool. Story, like I said, story, animation-wise, A1 Pictures always does a great job. Had no problems with it. It was a little bit, I guess the only, not even concerned, but the one thing that kind of threw me off was the design for Satoru's mom, because she has, like, the defined lips, like the big puffy lips, and it's funny to see that, and everyone else has the same kind of small lips that is usually drawn in anime. So it was interesting to see how I guess, but it worked. At first when I saw it, I was like, her lips are kind of big, like really big, but like later on, you don't really notice it and you don't really care. The final piece that I want to talk about are the opening and the ending of the anime. Now, the opening, usually in anime, they have a band come in, or a group, and they sing, they make a new song for this, for the anime. In this one, they didn't do that. What they did is they had an older song, have the band redo it of how they play in their live version, and I think a song that fits it beautifully, and it's a song called Riri by Asian Kung Fu Generation. This is one of my favorite songs, and to hear it in the anime was amazing. And in the opening, in and of itself, is very what's the word, foreshadowing, because you see all these images that really don't make sense, and at one point you see this place where you see a black silhouette of him, and he's kind of holding his head, and you see these little what are they called, these like movie rolls, and like they stop at certain points, and you see a person here or two people there, and you see like their eyes blacked out, and you're like, well, what does this all mean? And then you see a body bruised, and you see some blood, you see death, and you see a bullet come out, and it's like tons of stuff happening. And near the middle of the song, you see a hallway filled with water, and you're like, what the heck's going on? Like it's a lot of stuff that you have no idea. But as you're watching the show, like, oh, that's what this is. Oh, that's what this is. Like, if you, I don't think you can really piece it together, with just watching the opening. But like when you see it the entire show and then you go back to it and watch it again, you're like, oh, that's what all this means. And the song fitted perfectly, Riri, yeah. And then the ending also was amazing. The song's called Sore wa Chisa na Hikari no Yona. And it's by the band called, or by the girl named Sayuri. And it's really, really interesting song. Like it starts out with this guitar, this acoustic guitar riff, picking, and then it comes with her voice, and it's very sultry, and it's very kind of sucks you in, and the images that happen in the ending, again, you don't really understand when you watch it the first time, because you see different imaging, you see different women and girls that are in there, but they're just like kind of silhouettes, and you're like, what is going on here? And the song, it kind of comes in slow, and then at the chorus, it just punches you in the face. You're like, and it comes with all these different emotions that you feel and that you see in the ending, and I loved it. Like, this is one of the few animes where I watched the opening every single time, and I watched the ending every single time, because it was just that good. Overall, I enjoyed every minute of this anime. It was great. Some people, they say like the killer was obvious, or they were hoping it was someone else. There was a bigger twist. I honestly didn't think there was a problem with it, because although it was obvious, they did a lot of things in the anime, in the story, to make it look like it wasn't this person. And it still got you at the end. You're like, oh, it really was this person. And some people were like, oh, it's this person the entire time. Nothing ever said something different. But I mean, it was fine. Like, knowing who the killer is wasn't the point of the show. It was Satoru's journey of how he was when he started the anime, 29 years old, and he's very like down. He doesn't really have any passion, and through the journey of what happens to him in Revival, at the very end, he's a totally different person. He's very optimistic. He's very, wants to live life and wants to believe, and that's the point of the show. It wasn't necessarily to find out who the killer was, or to make that the big, the pinnacle of the show. It was just to see his journey, of how he overcame, something very traumatic, and it was lovely. And so my score out of 10 chibis will be 9.1 out of 10. Great anime. It honestly will probably top my top 15, maybe top 10. There's just a few other ones that I love more, just because I have a little bit more of I have more emotion, or more emotions were shown while I was watching certain animes. But this one certainly is a great one. I haven't dove too much into the mystery, psychological thriller, or drama animes, aside from a few here and there. But this one makes me want to venture more into this genre. I plead you all, go see it. And what's interesting is this was simulcasted on Crunchyroll and also Funimation, which I didn't know. Like, I barely found out that Funimation was simulcasting, so that means that it's gonna get a dub. And there's so many things that it could be, like so many people that could play Satoru that I have in my mind that I won't give away. But hopefully they do a great dubbing on this one. Thanks so much for listening to Chibi No Podcast reviews for Erased, or Boku Dake ga Inai Machi. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. In the comments, if you have different opinions, leave them in the comments. And if you want to hear more from Chibi No Podcast, you can always listen to our weekly podcast that we have on Podomatic. Just search Chibi No Podcast, they'll be there. Right now we're in a little break, but we'll be back. And then find us on Twitter at Chibi No Podcast, capital C, capital N, capital P. Find us on Instagram, same, at Chibi No Podcast. And on Facebook, Chibi No Podcast. If you have any requests for me to review any other animes, please leave that in the comment section below. I will review them and let you know what I think of them. Thank you so much again for listening. Have a good day. This is David the Smashman out.